The cargo ship's warning alarm screamed through the cockpit as Tom fought with the controls. Red lights flashed across his face while the ship plunged through the purple clouds of the unknown planet below. His hands gripped the steering columns so tight his knuckles turned white. Come on, he muttered, trying to level the ship. The navigation systems had failed 10 minutes ago, followed by the main engine. Now he was falling more than flying, and the ground was rushing up fast. Through the view screen, he could see a landscape of dark purple trees and strange rock formations. The ship's remaining sensors warned of high toxicity in the atmosphere. Not that it mattered. He'd be dead if he couldn't land the ship in one piece. Tom pulled back hard on the controls, trying to slow his descent. The cargo ship groaned and shuddered around him. The heat shields were failing, and the hull temperature was rising dangerously. He could smell something burning in the engine compartment. The ground came up to meet him with frightening speed. Tom barely had time to brace himself before impact. The ship hit hard, bouncing once, twice, then skidding across the rocky ground. Metal screamed against stone as the hull tore open. Emergency foam sprayed from the ceiling, cushioning Tom as the ship finally ground to a halt. For several long moments, he just sat there, breathing hard, checking himself for injuries. His chest hurt where the safety harness had caught him, and he had a cut on his forehead, but he was alive. That was something. The ship's systems were dead. Only the emergency lights still worked, casting an eerie red glow through the smoke-filled cockpit. Tom grabbed his emergency pack and pulled on his environment suit. The suit's readings confirmed what the ship's sensors had shown. The air outside was toxic. He forced open the emergency hatch and climbed out onto the ship's hull. The crash had carved a long trench through the alien landscape. Pieces of his ship were scattered everywhere, smoking in the strange purple light. The sky above was a swirling mass of dark clouds, occasionally lit by flashes of lightning. That's when he saw it. Another crash trail, maybe half a mile away. Fresh too, judging by the smoke still rising from it. Tom hesitated. His training said to stay with his ship and wait for rescue. But his communications were dead, and he had no idea if his distress beacon was even working. Might as well check it out, he said to himself. Not like I've got anywhere else to be. The walk was harder than he expected. The gravity was slightly higher than Earth standard, and the terrain was treacherous. Strange plants grew everywhere, some moving in ways plants definitely shouldn't move. Once, he saw something slither away into the undergrowth, something big. The other crash site was smaller than his. The ship was unlike anything he'd ever seen before, with smooth, curved lines that reminded him of an insect's shell. It had split open on impact, revealing glimpses of alien technology inside. Tom approached cautiously, one hand on his emergency laser cutter. "Hello? Anyone alive in there?" A sound from inside the ship made him freeze. Something was moving. He saw a shadow. Then a shape emerged from the wreckage. Tom's mouth fell open. The alien was about his height, but looked like a cross between a praying mantis and a human. It had 4 arms, an exoskeleton that shimmered with iridescent colors, and large compound eyes. It was wearing some kind of protective suit, damaged but still intact. The alien saw him and went completely still. They stared at each other for what felt like an eternity. Then the ground shook, and both of them looked up. The clouds were getting darker, and Tom's suit sensors were going crazy. A drop of rain hit a nearby rock, and the stone sizzled where it landed. More drops began to fall. Acid rain. Tom looked at the alien, then at his ship in the distance, too far to reach in time. The alien ship was more damaged than his. They were both in trouble. He made a quick decision and pointed to a nearby cave entrance. "This way," he shouted, gesturing frantically. The alien hesitated for just a moment, then nodded. Together, they ran for shelter as the deadly rain began to fall in earnest. Neither of them knew it yet, but this was the beginning of something extraordinary. The cave wasn't deep, but it protected them from the acid rain. Tom watched through the entrance as the deadly droplets ate small holes in the rocky ground outside. Next to him, the alien stood perfectly still, its compound eyes reflecting the strange purple light from outside. They had been staring at each other for several minutes now. Tom noticed the alien was favoring one of its right arms, probably injured in the crash. He pointed to himself. Tom. Then he waited. The alien's head tilted slightly. It touched its chest with its upper left hand and made a series of clicking sounds. Tom knew he'd never be able to pronounce that. Mind if I call you Ray? You know, because of how your shell kind of rays out like that. He gestured at the alien's iridescent exoskeleton. The alien just watched him, unmoving. A loud crack of thunder made them both jump. The storm was getting worse. Tom's suit sensors showed the rain would last for hours, and the cave wasn't safe for long-term shelter. They needed to reach his ship. It was more intact and had supplies. Tom pulled out his emergency tablet and drew a simple picture. Two stick figures walking to a box-shaped ship. He showed it to Ray, pointing outside between the rainfall, toward where his ship lay. Ray studied the drawing, then made a gesture that looked like agreement. But when Tom started to step toward the cave entrance, Ray quickly grabbed his arm with surprising gentleness. The alien pointed to the rain, then to Tom's suit, then made a slashing motion across its own neck. "Yeah, the acid rain would eat through my suit," Tom said, understanding. "But we can't stay here. The cave." He tapped the wall, and small pieces crumbled away. Not stable. Ray seemed to think for a moment, then reached into a compartment in its own suit. It pulled out something that looked like silver fabric. Through gestures and drawings in the dust on the cave floor, Ray explained its plan. The fabric was some kind of protective sheet. They could use it as a shield against the rain. "Smart thinking," Tom said, nodding. "But it's not big enough for both of us." Ray insisted Tom take the shield. Tom refused, pointing to Ray's injured arm. They spent several precious minutes arguing through gestures until Tom had an idea. He took off his outer suit jacket and held it up with the silver fabric. Together, they might have just enough coverage. They tested their makeshift shelter at the cave entrance. The silver fabric repelled the acid rain perfectly, while Tom's jacket, treated with standard cargo pilot weather protection, held up reasonably well. It wouldn't last long, but it might be enough. "Ready?" Tom asked, knowing Ray couldn't understand the word but hoping his tone carried the meaning. Ray made a sound that might have been agreement. They ran. The acid rain hissed and spattered against their shelter. Tom's boots splashed through puddles that tried to eat through the soles. Ray moved with surprising grace despite the injury, helping hold their shelter steady with its good arms. Halfway to the ship, something moved in the purple undergrowth. A creature like a cross between a snake and a centipede slithered out, attracted by their movement. Its jaws opened, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. Tom stumbled back, but Ray stepped forward. The alien made a high-pitched sound that hurt Tom's ears. The creature recoiled as if in pain, giving them the chance to run past. They reached the ship just as Tom's jacket began to dissolve. Ray helped him force open the emergency hatch, and they tumbled inside as the last of their shelter fell apart. In the red emergency lighting of the ship's cabin, they caught their breath. Tom found himself laughing with relief, and to his surprise, Ray made a sound that might have been its species' version of laughter. The moment passed quickly. Ray's injury needed attention, and Tom's ship wouldn't stay safe forever in this corrosive atmosphere. But as they looked at each other in the dim light, something had changed. They weren't just two stranded beings anymore. They were survivors. Together. The first thing Tom noticed when he woke up was the strange chirping sound. Ray was examining the ship's broken control panel, making quiet clicking noises that somehow sounded frustrated. The alien had been working nonstop since they reached safety, trying to fix something in its breathing apparatus. Tom sat up slowly, his muscles sore from yesterday's crash. "Need help?" Ray turned to look at him, then pointed to its own chest, making an exaggerated breathing motion. Tom understood. Something was wrong with how Ray was breathing the air. The alien's protective suit was damaged, and whatever mixture it needed wasn't quite right. Tom dug through his emergency supplies and pulled out his tablet again. He drew a simple diagram of lungs and air molecules, then pointed to Ray. The alien immediately perked up, understanding. Ray took the tablet and drew something different, a complex system that looked more like gills than lungs. "So you breathe differently," Tom said, pointing to his oxygen tanks, "and my air isn't right for you." Over the next hour, they developed a basic way to communicate through drawings and gestures. Ray's species needed a higher concentration of a gas similar to nitrogen, while the oxygen-rich mixture Tom breathed was slowly making the alien sick. They had another problem, too. Tom checked his oxygen supply. 3 days at most. Ray examined the readings and made a sharp clicking sound that clearly meant bad news. The alien showed Tom how the planet's strange atmosphere was slowly corroding both their breathing systems. "We need to fix this fast," Tom muttered. He stood up and walked to the ship's window. Outside, the purple landscape was deceptively beautiful in the alien sunlight. Something large flew past, a creature with multiple wings that looked more like floating ribbons. Ray touched his shoulder and pointed to the alien's crashed ship. Through more drawings, they figured out that Ray's ship had better atmospheric processors, while Tom's ship had a stronger power system. If they could combine them. The work was slow and frustrating. They had to stop every few hours when the toxic atmosphere became too much for Ray, and Tom's limited oxygen supply meant they couldn't waste time. But they made progress. Ray's technical knowledge was amazing. The alien could look at Earth technology and understand it almost instantly. Meanwhile, Tom's practical experience helped them adapt the alien parts to work with his ship's systems. "Like this?" Tom asked, holding up a modified pipe fitting. Ray made an approving trill and showed him where to connect it. They had stripped parts from both ships, creating a hybrid system that might keep them both breathing. Suddenly, the ship's remaining sensors blared a warning. The corrosive atmosphere had eaten through part of the hull. A thin stream of toxic gas began seeping in. Ray reacted instantly, using 3 arms to hold the breach while gesturing with the 4th for Tom to find something to seal it. Tom grabbed a container of emergency hull foam and sprayed it over the crack. The foam hardened instantly, stopping the leak. They stared at each other, breathing hard. That had been too close. Ray made a series of gestures, pointing at the hull, then outside, then drawing a clock shape on the tablet. "Yeah," Tom agreed, understanding perfectly. "We're running out of time." Tom stared at their dwindling food supplies with growing concern. 2 protein bars and 1 emergency ration pack. That was all he had left. Ray's own food supplies had been destroyed in the crash. They needed to find food soon, or surviving their breathing problems wouldn't matter. Ray was examining the readings from Tom's suit scanner, making thoughtful clicking sounds. The alien had figured out how to connect its own damaged sensors to Tom's suit, creating a better system for analyzing their surroundings. "Anything edible out there?" Tom asked, pointing to his mouth and then outside. Ray's response was a series of quick gestures they'd developed over the past day, dangerous but possible. The alien drew on their tablet, showing strange plants and what looked like small animals. Some had an X marked through them, deadly poisonous. Others had question marks, maybe safe. Tom nodded, understanding. They'd have to test things carefully. He picked up his laser cutter and emergency medical kit. Ray grabbed a sample collection tool from the alien ship's wreckage. Together, they stepped out into the purple world. The atmosphere was thick with strange smells. Even through his suit's filters, Tom could smell something sweet and rotting. Ray led the way, those compound eyes better at spotting movement in the dense vegetation. They found their first potential food source near a cluster of rock formations. It looked like a cross between a mushroom and a fruit, glowing faintly blue. Ray scanned it with the modified sensors while Tom kept watch, his laser cutter ready. A screech from above made them both look up. A creature like the ribbon-winged thing they'd seen earlier was diving toward them. But this one had teeth, rows of them, all along its flowing edges. "Down!" Tom shouted, pulling Ray away just as the creature struck. Its teeth left deep scratches in the rock where they'd been standing. Ray made a sharp warning sound and pointed. Two more were circling above. They ran for cover under a thick group of tree-like plants. The ribbon creatures couldn't fit through the dense growth, but they'd lost their mushroom fruit sample in the rush. Ray touched Tom's arm and pointed to something else. Small creatures moving in the underbrush. They looked a bit like earth rabbits, if rabbits had 6 legs and armored scales. More importantly, Ray's sensors showed they might be edible. Getting close to them was the hard part. These creatures were fast and smart. The first 2 times they tried, their prey escaped easily. But then Ray had an idea. The alien drew a quick plan on the tablet. Tom would drive the creatures toward a natural rock funnel, while Ray used its ability to make that high-pitched sound they'd discovered during the acid rain escape. The sound seemed to stun the local wildlife. Their plan worked perfectly. Tom herded the creatures by making noise and movement, driving them exactly where they wanted. When they tried to escape, Ray's sonic burst stunned them just long enough. They caught 2 of the creatures. Ray's sensors confirmed they were safe for Tom to eat, though the alien couldn't digest them. For Ray, they found more of the glowing mushroom fruits, which the sensors said would provide nutrition for the alien's biology. The hunt had taken hours, and the sky was growing dark. They hurried back to the ship, but something was tracking them. Tom could hear it moving through the vegetation, always just out of sight. Suddenly, a massive shape burst from the purple foliage. It looked like a giant praying mantis, but with a mouth full of shark-like teeth. The creature was at least twice their size. Ray pushed Tom aside just as the monster struck, its claws slashing through the air where Tom had been standing. Tom rolled and fired his laser cutter, scoring a hit on the creature's leg. It screamed in pain, but kept coming. Then Ray did something incredible. The alien stepped forward and made a complex series of sounds and movements. The monster hesitated, swaying slightly. Ray's communication was keeping it confused. "Run." Tom grabbed Ray's arm, and they sprinted for the ship. They made it inside just as the creature slammed into the hull, making the whole ship shake. Safe inside, they looked at each other and did their own versions of laughing. They had food, and they were alive. Together, they were learning to survive this deadly world. But both of them knew they'd just made their first real enemy on this planet, and it knew where they lived. The first warning came from Ray's modified sensors. The alien's agitated clicking drew Tom to the ship's window, where dark clouds were gathering on the horizon. These weren't like the normal purple clouds. These were almost black, shot through with green lightning. Ray pointed to their tablet, drawing quickly. The alien's weather sensors showed this storm was different from the acid rain they'd faced before. It was bigger, deadlier. "How long?" Tom asked, making their agreed-upon time gesture. Ray held up both sets of hands, all fingers spread. 20 time units, about 4 Earth hours until the storm hit. Their ship wouldn't survive. The hull was already weakened from the crash and the planet's corrosive atmosphere. Tom could see new cracks forming every day, and their patch jobs wouldn't hold against a major storm. Ray was examining the hull's weak points, making distressed sounds. The alien pointed to several spots where the metal was literally dissolving. Then Ray drew a picture that made Tom's heart sink, the ship breaking apart in the storm. "We need a new shelter," Tom said. He began gathering their vital supplies, the breathing system they'd built together, their remaining food, tools, and medical supplies. Ray understood immediately and started collecting the most important sensor equipment. Outside, the wind was picking up. Strange calls echoed through the purple forest as the local wildlife sought shelter. Even the giant mantis shark that had been stalking their ship was gone. They had 3 options for shelter. Tom pointed to each, the cave they'd first hidden in, Ray's crashed ship, or the dense forest. Ray studied the sensor readings, then pointed firmly away from all three options. Instead, the alien drew something new, an underground passage. Tom frowned. Underground? Where? Ray led him to a spot about 50 meters from their ship. The alien sensors had detected something beneath the surface, a network of tunnels. If they could break through, they might find shelter. They began working frantically. Tom's laser cutter proved useless against the strange rock, but Ray had a cutting tool that slowly ate through the stone. The wind grew stronger as they worked, carrying stinging particles that pitted their suits. After 2 hours of cutting, they broke through. The dark tunnel stretched below them, disappearing into the planet's depths. Ray's sensors showed breathable air. At least for Tom, the alien would still need their jury-rigged breathing system. The storm was getting closer. They could see the wall of black clouds approaching, green lightning dancing inside it. The wind was so strong now that they had to hold onto each other to stay upright as they carried their supplies to the tunnel entrance. Just as they were making their final trip, disaster struck. A piece of debris carried by the wind slammed into Tom's leg, sending him sprawling. Pain shot through his ankle. Sprained or broken, Ray immediately came back for him, helping him up with 3 arms while carrying supplies with the 4th. They barely made it into the tunnel before the storm hit. The sound was deafening, like 1,000 freight trains roaring overhead. They retreated deeper underground as green lightning struck their abandoned ship, tearing it apart. In the darkness of the tunnel, Tom activated his soup lights while Ray used its natural bioluminescence to help them see. The alien examined Tom's ankle with gentle touches, using their remaining medical supplies to wrap it. Together, they watched through the tunnel entrance as their ship, their home for the past few days, was slowly destroyed by the storm. Tom felt a wave of despair. That ship had been their only real hope of rescue. But Ray touched his shoulder and pointed deeper into the tunnel system. The alien sensors were picking up something strange, regular patterns that couldn't be natural. There was something down here, something built. Tom met Ray's compound eyes and nodded. They'd survived this far by trusting each other. Whatever was down there in the darkness, they'd face it together. Moving carefully, Tom leaning on Ray for support, they began their journey into the depths of the alien planet. As the storm raged on above, the tunnel stretched endlessly through the darkness. Tom's ankle throbbed with every step, but Ray's support made it possible to keep moving. Their lights revealed smooth walls that couldn't be natural. Something had made these passages. After walking for what felt like hours, Ray suddenly stopped. The alien sensors were going crazy, detecting energy readings ahead. They entered a large chamber that made both of them freeze in amazement. The room was filled with machinery. Ancient control panels lined the walls, covered in dust, but somehow still showing faint signs of power. Strange symbols glowed weakly on dark screens. In the center stood a massive pillar of technology that reached from floor to ceiling. "What is this place?" Tom whispered, though he knew Ray couldn't fully understand his words. The alien was already moving toward one of the control panels, compound eyes reflecting the dim lights. Ray's excitement was clear in the way the alien moved, all 4 arms working quickly to brush away dust and examine the symbols. Tom recognized that look. It was the same one Ray had shown when fixing their breathing apparatus. The alien understood this technology. Using their tablet, Ray drew a quick series of images: the planet, the storms, and then something like a shield surrounding everything. Tom's eyes widened as he understood. This was a weather control station, he asked, mimicking rain and then making a blocking gesture. Ray nodded enthusiastically. They spent the next hour exploring the chamber. Ray worked to understand the ancient machinery while Tom searched for anything useful. He found what looked like storage units built into the walls. Inside one, they discovered preserved equipment that closely resembled their breathing gear. The people who built this, Tom gestured to the room, then to their breathing equipment. They needed special air too. Ray made a sound of confirmation and drew more on their tablet. The drawings showed that the planet hadn't always been toxic. The ancient builders had used this facility to protect themselves when their world began to change. But something had gone wrong. Suddenly, the ground shook. The storm above was getting worse, its effects reaching even this deep underground. Dust fell from the ceiling, and some of the weaker panels sparked dangerously. Ray moved with new urgency, working to interface their salvaged equipment with the ancient machinery. Tom helped as best he could, following Ray's gestures and drawings to connect power sources and replace damaged components. The aliens' technical knowledge was incredible. Ray seemed to instinctively understand how everything worked, making connections that Tom would never have seen. But they needed Tom's strength and practical skills to actually move and repair the ancient parts. Another tremor rocked the facility. This time, part of the ceiling collapsed nearby. They had to work faster. Ray made an excited series of clicks. The central pillar was humming now, power flowing through circuits that had been dormant for centuries. Screens flickered to life around them, showing diagrams of the planet's atmosphere. Tom's tablet suddenly connected to the ancient system, translating some of the data. His heart beat faster as he realized what they'd found. This wasn't just a weather control station. It was a planetary defense system, and it still had power. But there was a problem. Ray's drawings showed that activating the system would take almost all their remaining power, including what they were using for their breathing equipment. They had enough energy for one task. They could either call for help or try to survive. Tom pointed to their breathing gear, then to the ancient machinery, making a questioning gesture. Ray's response was clear. They had to choose. As if emphasizing their predicament, another violent shake rattled the chamber. More ceiling panels crashed down around them. The storm was getting stronger, and soon even these underground chambers wouldn't be safe. They looked at each other in the dim light. Human and alien, both stranded, both dependent on technology to breathe, both running out of time. They had found perhaps the most advanced technology on this planet, but using it might kill them. They needed to make a decision. Fast. Time was running out. The ancient chamber shook constantly now as the storm raged above. More ceiling panels crashed down around them, and the air was filling with dust. Tom and Ray stared at the central control pillar, knowing they had to choose. Use the power to call for help or redirect it to the planetary defense system. Tom pointed to the distress beacon controls, then to Ray. The alien immediately shook its head and pointed back at Tom. Each was trying to convince the other to take the chance at rescue. Ray drew rapidly on their tablet, pictures showing the humans' limited oxygen supply. Tom countered by drawing Ray's deteriorating condition from the toxic atmosphere. They were both right. Neither would survive much longer. Another violent tremor. A large crack appeared in the chamber's wall, and emergency lights began flashing on the ancient panels. Ray's sensors showed the storm was reaching unprecedented levels. Soon, it would tear through even these underground chambers. That's when Tom noticed something in Ray's sensor readings. He grabbed their tablet and drew frantically. The distress beacon, then both their species symbols, then an equal sign. Ray's compound eyes widened with understanding. The alien quickly moved to the controls, all four arms working with incredible speed. Tom helped where he could, following Ray's directions as they modified the ancient machinery. They weren't going to choose between themselves. They were going to try something that might save them both. The plan was desperate. They would merge their remaining power supplies, including their breathing systems, into one massive burst. By combining elements of both their technologies, they might be able to create a signal that both their peoples could detect. But it would leave them with only minutes of breathable air. As they worked, the chamber continued to collapse around them. A support beam crashed down, nearly hitting them. The crack in the wall was spreading, and they could hear the horrifying sounds of the storm getting closer. Finally, Ray gave the signal. Everything was ready. They looked at each other one last time. Then Tom hit the activation switch. Power surged through the ancient machinery. Their breathing systems died as every bit of energy was channeled into the signal. The central pillar blazed with light, and for a moment, the whole chamber hummed with energy. Then darkness. In the dim emergency lighting, Tom and Ray huddled together in a corner of the chamber, sharing what little breathable atmosphere remained in their suits. Minutes passed like hours. The storm raged closer, and their breathing grew more labored. Tom's vision began to blur. Beside him, Ray's movements were becoming sluggish. The alien weakly touched Tom's arm, making their gesture for thank you. Tom responded with Ray's species' version of the same gesture. The chamber wall finally cracked open. Wind and toxic atmosphere began pouring in. This was it, Tom thought. At least they had tried. At least they hadn't died alone. Then Ray's sensors lit up. Through the hole in the chamber wall, they saw lights. Not lightning, but artificial lights. A ship was landing above them. Then another, and another. The rescue teams found them barely conscious but alive. 2 different species ships had responded to their hybrid distress call. The unique signal, combining both human and alien technology, had caught the attention of both their peoples. Days later, recovered and breathing easily on a rescue ship, Tom sat with Ray in the observation deck. Through the window, they could see both their species ships working together to study the ancient facility. The planetary defense system was being repaired, and the storms were finally weakening. Ray drew one last picture on their tablet. 2 different figures standing together, surrounded by stars. Tom smiled and added to the drawing, a bridge between their 2 worlds. They had come to this deadly planet as strangers, each stranded and alone. They were leaving as something unprecedented, proof that different species could not only survive together, but help each other thrive. Their peoples had never officially met before this incident. Now, because of what happened on this planet, that was about to change. Tom looked at Ray and made their shared gesture for friend. Ray responded in kind, both of them knowing that some words need no translation. Sometimes hope comes in the strangest forms. Sometimes it takes nearly losing everything to find something greater than yourself.